Oh my God, we're live. So, hi everybody. I know this is going to be saved, so recorded, and so everybody will have access to it when they can. And yes, this is Spirit by Beyonce playing in the background. Here's Kelly. Bring you in, girlfriend. Approve. This is
Hello.
interesting. Oh, Jody's here too. Hey, Jody. I knew you'd be here. This is awesome. I'm playing Beyonce in the background, and it's called Spirit because I want this to inspire me and you and as many people as we can. All right, so I'm just going to do a super quick introduction. So this is Pepper, of course, and we have Callie with us today. I'm really excited. So I'm here to talk about self-love. You know, my new hashtag is love heals for reals, and it goes everywhere, and especially it starts with ourselves. So this is why I'm starting this series, and I'm going to invite people like Callie, people who are interested in talking about the importance of self-love. And I almost want to see, unconditional self-love, So this is, a number one episode. I'm glad it's not glitching so far. And before I give Callie the mic, I just want to quickly tell the story about how we met, because I think that tells a lot about what kind of people we are. So Callie and I are coaches and life coaches, relationship coaches, self-love coach, radical acceptance coach, you name it. We like helping people to feel better and have a better life. And so here we are also wanting to make our lives better and touch as many people as we can. And we both were thinking of doing an online course. And so here we are in this course. And both of us out of the entire group could smell a mile away the techniques of like how to make money and and it was played out on us. And interestingly enough, the guy was poking at both of us being like, so are you getting on the next call? Are you getting on this call? We're like, and we're being gentle. We're like, sure, thanks, bro. Like, this was great. But then her and I, of course, connected after, and we're like, we don't want to use tactics to sell anything. It's really like, if that speaks to you, if you feel in your heart that you'd be loving yourself for doing that, then do it. But having those plans, like even and just for the people watching, the guy at some point like leaves the room, just because you need some water, right? Which is, one way of making you think and maybe sign it. It was hilarious. So anyways, this is the kind of people we are. I think that says a lot, and we're super connected. And so Callie, I would love to introduce you, but the truth is that you already amaze me in so many ways and you're doing so many things. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself so that you'll pick the best part that you want for us to know about you.
All right, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Callie Mao, and I am a relationship coach. Like Pepper had just mentioned, my whole relationship philosophy really is based around the premise that you can't have a healthy relationship if you're not a healthy individual. So my courses and private coaching and everything that I do really begins at the center of the sort of what I call the self-identification process, but it's like the self-love process, the self-acceptance process. And so that's, I think, very much where we connected, is because we both very much work in this realm, in this space. But I work with women and couples to deepen their level of intimacy within their relationships, both with partners and within themselves. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and I love following your Instagram. I look at your website. Like, yeah, I love your energy and I love your approach. And so there's so many questions, I have around the topic because, what I love about what you're bringing is the fact that you're looking at self-love and the importance of, your relationship to yourself, but also how to make it work with others. And that's what I really wanted to talk to you about, because I'm developing I think it's going to be a 4 or 5 week course. And the first part, of course, is all about, like, who are you? Like, remember who you are. You're all energy, like how you're dealing with you. But then, of course, week 2 taps into, who are they? And how do we make those energies kind of able to co-create or decide, what needs to happen? So what I'm seeing, and the first thing I want to look into, and maybe people can relate to this or not, but what I'm noticing first, because I'm not yet in the realm of relationships, and you're a pro at that, and I want to tell you a story too. But the question I'm asking myself is, or what I see mostly around people is women, because I also want to work with women, but I've worked with men too, and they're incredible. But what I see a lot of women doing is being sorry for just being. Like literally it comes to a point, and also, you know, we're in Canada, so if you're just like, oh, good old Canadian, you're being sorry, I'm like, no, but you're constantly literally sorry. Like, I'm sorry to be in the room, I'm sorry to be in your room, I'm sorry to have said this, I'm sorry to, oh, what do you think
Right.
about, like, what, because I think language is everything. I'm sure as a coach you see language, you know, it tells you everything about the person. Like, what do you think about how we talk to ourselves? Like, and is it something that you see when you counsel couples?
Yeah. So I actually find that women tend to be sort of socialized or programmed for that kind of behavior. And I think that it really goes back to, um, you know, during our formative years and when we were raised, sort of generationally, like, there was kind of, there used to be this philosophy of like, oh, boys will be boys and they can do this and they can do that and they can hit and they can, you know, be rough and tumble and they can say mean things, and that's just boys being boys. And it was like, it was the acceptance of that's okay. Whereas if girls were engaging in that kind of behavior, it was, that's not ladylike, that's not how girls act. You know, and so it was seen as us having to be, or sort of the programming of us having to be good girls, us having to fit this mold of what a good girl looked like.
Yeah.
And so I think that women, because we have been programmed that way, then we can be very apologetic if we step out of line of what others might think of as okay or acceptable, the good girl mold, you know?
And how, yeah, and as a relationship coach, like, how do you see that playing out? You know, like, if you see, so let's, you know, let's broaden a little bit the from saying just I'm sorry all the time, but just really when you see, for example, when you have couples and you see one of them being very apologetic for the way they are, like, how does that play out in relationships? Like, if you tend to be too apologetic about who you are, you know, what tends to happen for you? Are going to be eaten alive? Is it like, what dynamics does that create? Because you see that, right?
Yeah, I think that, again, because of sort of that programming and socialization, what I tend to see is women, because we tend to be more apologetic, we tend to be the ones that actually compromise little pieces of ourselves more and more and more and more in relationships. And oftentimes what I see is that those little pieces of yourself get compromised and compromised and compromised until it takes a huge emotional toll of, I don't even know who I am, you know?
Guilty of charge.
I'm
I've been there, been there. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yes, exactly. Slowly but
and
surely, at some point you wake up, you're like, who am I?
right. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that constantly compromising these little pieces of ourselves. And so that's part of what my program is designed to help us do, is stop, like, relationships coming together always takes compromise, but we should never compromise who we are. We should never compromise pieces of ourselves.
I know
So
that's exactly where the fine line is, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I see this apologetic thing sort of coming up, is that we've been socialized to like be apologetic and like fit the mold and compromise, you know. And so that tends to play out in adulthood within relationships of, if we can't truly get to that place of self-love, self-acceptance, and part of that being forming good and firm boundaries, then we can compromise too much. We can get into a position where, you know, we're mid relationship and we've lost sight of who we are.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So yeah, like, amen. I mean, and of course it brings that question for me, you know, of like, because for me, every time I got to that point, to me, that was a point of no return, unfortunately.
Right.
Like, I'd let it go so far that it's like,
Yeah.
we've been together for this long, and now I would have to explain to you, like, everything back from the beginning, like all those parts that I denounced because I was like, no, that's not good enough, you know, for him. That's not good enough for him. That's not good. Or for us or whatever, or for me. Because this is the thing too, is like back to self-love, like ultimately, like, and I've been through this too, like, and I'm starting to change the game right now. I'm starting to, face those moments where I'm like, okay, here's that moment where I could push the button a bit further because I'm still not feeling heard, or I could just, oh well, let's just shove that one under the rug, it's not that bad. And
Right.
and I notice it is, coming from not speaking up because not loving myself, thinking my truth is not worthy, and of course I have to change myself because no one otherwise would want me. This has been so deeply ingrained. And so
Yes.
finding a way, like, the fine line of like starting speaking up without
Yes.
necessarily, like, how do you coach people to like find that right balance when you've been your whole life trying to, let's say, to disappear yourself for the benefit of others, or just because you don't think you're good enough? How do you navigate your way back into, okay, I know I've said nothing for all this time, but I'm actually going to start saying what matters to me. Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I love the question. There are a few parts that I want to try and parse out here. So there is the piece about getting to the point of no return. And honestly, I've had like, that's when clients tend to come to me, is like, oh my gosh, my relationship has just gotten so bad. Now we really need help, rather than sort of the maintenance of it, along the way. But,
Mm.
I will be the one to fully admit, like, this is me here, fully admitting that was me too. So
Yeah.
I think we've
I
all
think
been
we're
there.
both, I'm like, count me in, girl. Like, yeah, we've all been there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, just knowing that to a certain extent it's normal, but it's also what I'm here to try and do is, I feel like there are so many reasons that people don't actually speak up and get help and talk about problems within their relationship, because they're so afraid of judgment of others, you like, even from their spouse. Oh, my spouse wouldn't want me to like let people know that we're having problems. They're afraid of how we might look, or
Oh, wow.
things like that. And so um what part of what I would love to do is start to normalize the fact that we all have problems, in our relationships. We all do. It's just a matter of to what extent.
And how you navigate them, right? Like, I feel like, yeah, it's really how
Absolutely.
you recover. Not so much how you fall, but how you recover. Like, what's the intention? Like, what is, yeah.
Yes. So I find that oftentimes when women get to that point of, I've fallen so far down this hole, and now I'm to a point, I've tolerated it, and I've tolerated it, and I've tolerated it, and then they get to a point of almost intolerance. So then we flip the switch to like, I'm no longer accepting any of your crap. You can't do this. It goes to a completely opposite end of the
The
spectrum.
pendulum effect, yeah, of
And
course.
right. And so, part of what I try to my clients is that it's not about getting over here or getting over here to too tolerant or intolerant. It's about finding that middle ground of what this is, sort of the healthy boundary zone, here in the middle. And that's the goal, is to be there, to understand that it is part of self-love is having boundaries and knowing what you will and will not accept, and just saying, I'm not going to accept something outside of this.
That's gorgeous. Like, I think that's like I'm not going to say rule because I hate rules, but a good idea to start really any relationship is when we talk about boundaries, because it's such a loaded word. Oh my God. But it's an important word because, again, like, my course is based on the fact that we're all energy. So, like, you can, when you speak your boundaries, they come into existence, it's shared with someone, and then that person can decide to respect them or not, or to try to learn to, they can do whatever they decide to have with it. Yet and it's also a great thing to have, of course, for ourselves, because that's where you can actually start doing your own work on yourself. It's like, okay, this is because boundaries, very often it sounds like, you know, I'm asking you not to step in, but I feel like it's also a boundary in terms of like, this is my little heaven on earth that I'm trying to build, you know, within myself. You know, what are the practices that I need? What are the people I need to talk to? What is the vibration I need to have? What kind of movement do I need to add to my day? What, you know, like really being able to build one's own little world that doesn't feel so much like there's 100 people constantly judging us, or, you know, and be able to like just be able to do our work. So
Right.
how do you, as a relationship coach, I'd love to hear how you define boundaries.
So for boundaries, I really think of boundaries in two different ways, because we have our physical boundaries. I mean, and that's essentially how we let people physically interact with us. I don't know, I'm sure that everyone has had an experience of, you know, somebody that has like come to give you a hug and you weren't expecting it, or I mean, just violent, or maybe they were just standing a little too close to you and it was making you feel uncomfortable. So it's important to understand and distinguish our physical boundaries and our internal boundaries. Our internal boundaries are essentially how we self-protect and allow others to interact with us. So
Ooh, okay.
yeah, and it's based, you know, it's the behavior of what we're going to allow people to get away with, you know?
Right.
And and that's why I think that boundaries, especially in relationships, not just romantic relationships, every relationship we have, there has to be a sense of, what are my boundaries? What are my boundaries within my friendships? You know, what are my boundaries within my family relationships? How am I going to let, you know, this person talk to me, or treat me, or interact with me? There, every single relationship that I could think of, you know, whether it's coworkers or family or romantic relationships, boundaries and our sense of what we will tolerate needs to be present. We need to be aware of it.
I love what you're saying. I love it. I love it. I love it. Because I always have those two, it's not conflicting, but to me, it's like almost like masculine versus feminine energy. Here we come. Feminine and masculine energies. Ooh, it's getting juicy. Because so when I hear, you know, with other people, you know, having internal boundaries, you know, how can I be, how do I, would like to be treated, not treated, but also, so how to be spoken to, you know, what is you're sensitive to, not sensitive to, like respecting all of this, which I totally agree. Now, there's also something to be said, I just want to slide this in, is that there's also like temporary boundaries. You know, it's like the boundaries, like, you know what, today I'm not in the mood for blah, blah, blah. You know, like, you know, those moments where you're just like, hey, no harm's done, but right now, no capacity for that. You know, it's like those temporary boundaries are not like, you know, because sometimes saying like, so why am I saying all of this? Because while my heart is like, has butterflies hearing this, because I'm like, of course, boundaries allow people to know each other and say, okay, you're sensitive there, you're not sensitive there, this is important to you, this is not important to you, blah, blah, blah. There's also the meditator in me who, you know, does Vipassana meditation, and they talk about, of course, having ourselves noble speech, but what they're talking about is really the fact that we're 100% always responsible for not what's happening to us. Well, they say everything, but really they're talking about our own vibrations. Right. And so I'm not going to say that that's the gig with Vipassana, you know, but ideally, the more you do Vipassana, the more you're not so much self-loving, but more at peace with what is, just with what is. And so technically, if you do the work and after maybe 27 lifetimes, you'll be enlightened like Buddha. Okay, we need to get back in now. And I'm saying, I'm like, I don't have 27 lifetimes. I probably have more, but like, I want this life to like, anyways. So while I love, and that's why there's a book that they wrote as well called non-violence, not pacifism, because they're not saying, you know, we're going to be meditators and we're just going to accept everything and be like, oh, sure, I see your pain, it's not mine. Because of course, if someone's hurting you, is because they're hurting in the first place. So I get the whole thing, but it's like finding this, so having boundaries. And I think it really comes down to, again, based on self-love and radical self-acceptance, it's really like knowing ourselves so deeply that it's not so much, well, it could become a request, but you know, like, what if it always gets to like almost gets to the point of like, you know so much where you're at. If it works for you, you're there, and if it doesn't work, you can just walk away. Like, is it something that we want to achieve at some point, to be able to find a way to sure communicate it, but also graciously know when to just ta-da, like where's the fine line between, okay, now is not the time, or because I think there's something to be said too about like, okay, how do we set up our boundaries? And I know I'm giving you too much information right now, so good luck to answer this question. But yeah, how do you navigate this? Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see where I'm going
Yes,
with this? You feel me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm picking up what you're putting down here.
I think yeah.
So what I say is, this is all about creating balance. And so it's about understanding that, okay, I'm going to use this example because it came to mind for me as you were speaking. My oldest brother, who lives in Seattle, I go and visit him every few months when I'm there for my son's medical care. And he was reaching out to me about making plans with my son. And I just so happened to have a really, really busy week. And he had reached out to me several times, and I'm like, oh, let me get back to you. And then he had sent me a text message that basically said, I'm effing tired of this. You're not getting back to me. I want to make these plans. Just give me, your son's phone number. I'll talk to him directly. And then started going off on me about how, basically my parenting. It was a huge, blow up moment. Now, one thing that I understand about my oldest brother, even though he's never been diagnosed as Asperger's, there are definitely some qualities there that, I think he tends to struggle with self-expression sometimes. And so I do, knowing that and knowing him and loving my brother, I give him a certain amount of grace, but I don't allow him to push my boundary so far, because those words and the way that, he was speaking to me wasn't okay. I don't treat me like that. And so I very calmly responded with I'm very sorry that I haven't gotten back to you. I have had an extremely busy week and it has slipped my mind, and I apologize for that. However, your response to me and the way that you're speaking to me is not something that I'm willing to tolerate. When you're able to, have a calm conversation with me, I'm open to making plans with you, but I just want you to know that for me, that's a boundary, and it's not a way that I allow people to talk to me. And just at that. And he sat with that for a moment, and then he calmly responded with you're right, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have, talked to you like that. And, and then we moved on. But in that interaction there, it's clear that my busyness and not getting back to him in time made him feel a certain way, like maybe he wasn't important, or, it triggered certain internal messages for him. And so he reacted from an emotional place, and because of that, violated my boundary. And so, and I think that's, that story, I think, is very important because it happens so often. Somebody does something to us and it triggers an emotion, and then we react from an emotional place.
Yeah.
So part of, boundaries, and let me tie this into the whole meditation thing. Yeah. Because I also, love meditation, and find it like I use meditation as a tool to help recenter myself, because coming from a place of healthy self-esteem and coming from your best centered self is going to give you your best chance for effective communication, you know, good relationships. and so I use meditation specifically as a tool, and it's not a tool of I have to accept everything that's thrown at me. I don't. That's where good boundaries come in. I'm absolutely still allowed to have my boundaries and say, this is okay, this isn't okay. But I don't, it allows me to come from a place of calm and understanding versus a place of reactivity. And then we just kind of do the back and forth thing. And it tends to be kind of a waste of time and unproductive. And all it kind of results in typically is hurt feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I love that we tied into, because again, with that we tied in meditation into it, because when I think of Buddha or even Goenka, the teacher of Vipassana, they are full of compassion. It's ridiculous. Like it's gross. It's just like, yo, like you're so loving, like you just smile and my heart is melting. Like, you know, it's just the energy is insane, right? And at the same time, I think something to be said about not trying to bypass our own, I guess, state of being or where we're at in life. You know what I mean? It's like, because I've been guilty of that too for many years, of like, you know, what they call spiritual bypassing. You know, instead of actually like addressing the issues, maybe I would just be like, that's okay, I'm just gonna meditate and I'll be fine. You know, it's like, okay, great, but are you? You know, and of course it's better. Like, it's been like that meditation has like opened like my heart so much, and made me realize, especially mostly a lot of stuff about myself. And at the same time, it's like, it's a great tool, and it's important not to, like, it's good to use it to get to know ourselves better and understand, you know, what feels right, what doesn't feel right, where we're at, and really spend time to be with ourselves, and not use it as a, because I've been guilty of this for probably the first 4 years out of the 5. I was probably spiritual bypassing, like completely. I was like, I'm good, I meditate. I mean, it helped immensely, but it wasn't right in my mindset. So I was using it to try to be someone else, as opposed to using it to get to know myself better. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, I was using it as an identity thing, of being like, oh, I feel good about myself because I meditate. But if I don't, then I'm a piece of, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, whoa, that's not good. That's not why I should meditate. I should meditate because it gives me something, not because it makes me look a certain way. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't my goal, but I realized that if I meditate, then, you know, people think that's amazing. And so therefore I must be lovable. Like, yo, I had it so backwards. You know what I mean? Instead of being like, no, you learn to love yourself while you meditate, honey.
Right.
Like, there's no need to go out there and try to get a feedback loop there, you know?
Yeah. I wanted to like just tell the story. So I was in New York and I had gone to a talk with Joseph Goldstein.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, the meditation guru.
Yeah.
And afterward, I had talked to him and I had asked him the question, do you believe that self-acceptance leads to self-love? And he's like, tell me what you mean by that. And I said, you know, in the past, I had really struggled with a lot of self-critical thoughts. And if we can learn to accept, you know, ourselves, does that sort of start to transform into loving ourselves? And he, I remember feeling like, you know, I was the Padawan and he was, Yoda. And like, it was just one of those moments where I was like, oh my gosh, because his response was actually, you know, we all have self-critical thoughts, but rather than trying to do this extreme self-acceptance thing, it might be, I mean, if you're really coming up against something challenging, it might be more helpful to just ask yourself, like, notice that you're having the thought, but then just say, what is a thought? Like, it's nothing. It's nothing tangible. It's nothing that I have to attach to. You know, I had this thing come up, and you just go, you notice it, and you can go, huh, that's there, you know, and just leave it at that. It's when we start to attach ourselves to these thoughts that I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm bad, or I'm not good enough. When we start to attach to those thoughts, that's when we throw ourselves off balance. So I think that part of the practice of meditation that's helpful is really noticing these thoughts that come up, but really then just asking yourself the question, is that a thought or a belief that I want to attach to?
Yeah. That's so true. Because again, you know, where your focus goes, energy grows, or, you know, there's many ways of saying it, but that's kind of the idea too. It's like, do we want to get stuck in a loop, which is just literally a thought that is, according to meditation too, you know, is a reaction to a body sensation. So, and
Sweet.
and so, and even going deeper than this, because I know it happens to you. I realized it was happening to me, and I didn't know it was happening to me until I went on Salt Spring for 2 weeks. It's like, there's so much more stress that is caused to the body, even living in the city, you know, where there's sounds all the time, there's lights, there's people, you know. It's like, not that but the body gets stressed. We might not necessarily notice it, but there's all those micro stressors that we don't notice. So if on top of it, we're deciding to, like, you know, attach to something that doesn't feel good, but that brings the fact, and that's why I love what you said too about noticing the thoughts, you know, like being in meditation. For me, when I meditate, there's so many type of meditations. Oh my goodness. The one I do is really trying to feel my body, like really, really be in my body. And of course, my mind wanders crazy. When it wanders, I'm not judging. I'm being like, oh, you're thinking about this. That's cool. So I think there's a mix for me that is now happening. And what you said, you know, the meaning that we give to our thoughts. And I want to kind of circle it back to self, especially. Because no matter how much we point fingers, we say they did this, is whatever, like at the end of the day, no one is ultimately responsible for our well-being. Like absolutely no one. So like there was this joke that Goenka makes in when he does the discourse in Vipassana, where he talks about this guy walking on thorns, you know, and complaining that there's thorns everywhere. And the other guy's just like, well, put on some shoes. And it's kind of the idea, right? It's just like, make yourself, you know, good enough within yourselves that you can see beyond your own hurt. Because very often when we get hurt by someone is because it's triggering something in us that if potentially that thing was healed, you know, we wouldn't get hurt by it. But sometimes it's not about healing that part of us. It's really like, no, the other person is being so, you know, it's like, no, I'm clean. You're acting up. But very often we're saying, no, I'm not doing this. You're like, actually, you are too. Because again, that temporariness of self, you know, like one moment you're good and everything's fine, your husband is fine, but then the next day you get a bad news from a friend, and then suddenly your husband is a dickhead because he doesn't understand what you're going through. Like, so coming back to self, and coming back to, like, you know, what you talk about, what is for you the most important thing in terms of nurturing the self? Like if you see someone who is in disarray with their relationship, or I'm guessing might want to start bringing them first to, like, what is their relationship with themselves and maybe how that blows out. So how do you, what's your guidance around self-love? Like, how do you help people really kind of stop looking out there and come back to, okay, but where are you at? You know, and how do we take, what do you call that? You know, check-in of like, what's going on? Like, you know, health situation, this, you know what I mean? Like, how do you get people to just refocus where it's most important?
Yes. So actually, I mean, both in my courses and my private coaching, the first thing that I need a client or, you know, a student to understand, and so it's literally lesson number one is understanding that this is how attraction works. The healthier you are, the healthier you will attract. So the further out of healthy self-esteem you are, the less healthy of a person you will attract. So understanding, and like, I'm going to be very honest here.
Yes, please.
Where this can be problematic is if you entered into an unhealthy relationship, and so you can recognize, ooh, I'm not real healthy and he's not real healthy, but I'm going to get myself healthy. If your partner is not going to be a part of that process, oftentimes what happens is that as you become healthy and as you grow and as you get yourself there, that attraction, it's gone.
Yeah. And I've seen it.
Because as you start to heal and as you start to understand, oh, that person's really unhealthy, part of that process of getting yourself healthy is understanding that you can't change that person. And they have to be the one to want to be healthy with you, to want to change with you, to want to grow with you, if that's going to be the journey.
Yeah.
And if they are like, you do you, I'm just going to sit here and continue being me. First of all, that doesn't sound like a very healthy response to a relationship. But then oftentimes what's going to happen is that you're going to get yourself healthy, you're going to start growing, and as that, you're going to start growing apart. And so part of my process is really getting someone clear on what does how important love is to you. Because if you're the first priority and getting yourself to a good, healthy place is priority number one, then I'm right for you. Then this course is right for you. But if the goal is to save my relationship at all costs, I might not be the right person for you, because promising to change your partner, that change is going to be on them.
It's huge. Yeah.
So the first part of my process is really understanding that to have a healthy relationship, you have to be a healthy individual. So that takes us looking inward. And
so,
yep, it's just a whole process of, we need to get really clear on who you are and get that person to a healthy place, because we're all different and we all have our stuff.
Yeah, and let's talk about healthy, because I think there's also big misconceptions, because I used to have this misconception. I used to hear like, oh, I have to be healthy. So, considering that, I really didn't like myself, I was like, well, I'm never going to be good enough for anyone. Excellent. Until I started realizing that healthy for me, and, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I hear being healthy, and not necessarily first, but just knowing that my goal is to make myself feel healthier. And for me, and healthier looks different, like you said, for everybody else. That for everybody. For me, healthier would be literally like waking up doing what I want every day. Like, this to me would look like healthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'd be waking up being like, let's go. So that to me is healthy. Some other people would want, other things. Like, for me, that's healthy.
Right.
And so if this is what I want to focus on, it's not about, having all my, my things on par and like being already killing it on every level. I could be at the very beginning of this journey, and kind of like now, and being like, oh my God. But healthy is really owning, like, this is where I'm at. You're not responsible for it. And yet, if you want to come on board, if you want to hang out, this is what we're dealing with. Okay.
Right. What we're doing.
this is what's up around here. So of course you can't say that if you don't know what's up around here. And so they're coming to grab something empty that is waiting to latch onto something.
Right.
So what do you resonate with, that kind of healthy?
Yes. So I agree. Us all as individuals, we're all a little different, right? And so I don't necessarily operate under, and I know that some people believe that in this, I don't necessarily think that there's one person out there for you. I think that there's only one you.
That's what you need to work on. Yeah. The more you're you, the more you can, yeah.
Right. And the more you can get to your sort of truest version of yourself. And what I mean by that being the, like, without the ego, without the damage, like the truest form of yourself, the truest version of yourself. And again, understanding that for everyone, that looks different.
Yeah. And that's a journey too.
Right. So once we start getting there, then we can start understanding what the truest version of other people, what that would look like in a relationship with us. And it allows us to make an informed decision on, is this person in their truest version and me and my truest version, are we going to be able to create a bond and a relationship that we can coexist with one another in a good way and a healthy way?
Yeah. It always, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because like lately I've been going through like this crazy transition, and and unfortunately I have been some friendships that didn't make the cut, and I say it coldly, but really every time it breaks my heart so much, like so much. Like, it's not like I don't care, I'll see you later. It's just like, oh, I'm having to make this decision because it doesn't feel good for me. But really, am I sure? It's just like, no, it hasn't felt good for a while. Yeah, but I don't want, because that mini death every time. Like, I've lived it enough time now that I'm like, wow, it's so messed up, because on the other side of it is, yeah, the people who leave. And there's actually just a few people who are like, okay, honey, I love you. You're having a meltdown. It's all good. I'll call you in 2 days. And they're there, you know? And then the ones that are just like, oh, how dare you? Say you never. And so I'm like, there's part of me that wants to feel guilty about it, because I'm like, what have I done? But part of me is just like, but what if, like you were saying, there's multiple people for you. What if, as we become a bit more of our truth, then naturally some are not going to stick around, and some are going to go, hey, what's up, girl? And you're like, I've done nothing. I'm just making myself.
Yes, I agree, because, I oftentimes I'll use an example from a relationship standpoint, a romantic relationship standpoint. But like I said, this applies to all the relationships in our life. And as we grow, sometimes that means, like I said, growing apart from a partner. Sometimes that means growing apart from friendship. Sometimes
and that's love too, right? If it's done well, it's love too.
Right, exactly. And that's self-love, because again, and it sort of ties back, all these things are interconnected, right? Because it ties back to the boundaries issue. Like, if I, for example, I had a friend in my life that I grew up with since childhood, and she had always, even through childhood, kind of been like a difficult person to get along with. But I always kind of excused the behavior, or forgave her, or played it off, didn't get involved with it. And then it was like one day it was upon my doorstep, and it was directed at me. And this wasn't the first time that it had happened. This had been a constant cycle since childhood. And I got to the point where it was like, it literally came up, this friendship, not only does it no longer serve me, because it's not just about serving me, it's about, this person is literally violating my boundaries and attacking me, and this isn't the way that I would want a friend or someone that loves me and cares for me and respects me. That's not the way that someone would treat me. And I do not want to have people in my life that are going to engage in this behavior. So very similarly to the example with my, because, yeah.
And how do you get to that place where, is it, do you think you had too much one day, or is it because you've loved yourself better that you're able to see, like, because I know for me, for long times, it's, you know, I look back at certain relationship and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't love myself in there, or I was treated this way or this way. But when I was in it though, I had no clue. It was just like my homeostasis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was just like, and then a better one comes along and I look back and I'm like, Jesus, like that was not healthy. What the heck? And yet it was kind of perfect at the time though, because I was just where I was at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a question with this, not really. I want to tie it back to like, okay, so again, going back to being with oneself, because I know that's something really difficult to do, is do you have tips and tricks maybe for clients when it comes down to choosing oneself over a relationship or over the potential things that could be, you know, like those situations where, because you're in the relationship game as well, is knowing the difference between, okay, I love myself so much that I'm going to pursue this person even though it's not healthy, versus I love myself so much that I know I have to let this go. Like, how do you help people sometimes make the difference? Do you know what I mean? Like short, like instant gratification versus like, honey, long run, not good for you.
Right.
Because you
I
must
mean,
see that too,
honestly,
right?
I think that there is something in there that, you know, my job, I think, as a coach, is to help someone really get clear. It's not like, it's never my place to say, you know, honey, you need to leave. I mean, unless there's, you know, physical abuse going on, something like that. But part of my goal is to help clients and people in general really listen to that intuition. It, like, you know, if
Yeah.
what you're hearing, that if that intuition is saying like, okay, it might not be healthy, but he can offer me a really good life, or, you know, we have this together, we have that together, but the intuition is going, but it's really not healthy. That's you excusing your intuition. That's you sweeping it under the rug. And and what I really want to help clients do is explore, like, okay, but that intuition, let's explore that a little bit. You know, why is that present? And what, you know, what is this going to continue looking like down the line if you choose to ignore it? You know, let's play this out a little bit, you know, and get
Right.
in depth.
Which is great, because that means you're like helping them again, like focus completely on what their needs are, what
Right.
their boundaries are, and then from there you can start stepping out there and see who responds well to this or doesn't, and then go
Right.
from there. Yeah.
It's part of my core values. I mean, definitely within my business, but also in myself, is to be accepting of people where they're at. There are people that I've met and that have come into my life that they might say like, oh, I know that my relationship isn't healthy, but I'm not ready to leave yet.
And
It's
respect that. Yeah.
and it's not my job to force them to leave because they might not be ready.
Of
It's
course.
my job to put clarity around it, but you have to also be accepting that someone literally might just not be ready. And you can't, just like you can't make a butterfly come out of a cocoon early, you can't, you know,
I love that you say that. I love that you say that so much, because no, but seriously, like whether we talk about relationship or careers or whatever, and I speak for myself right now, and I hope people can relate to this, but how much do we feel guilty as well about like where we're at? Like for me, I have this guilt very often that says, oh, I'm here, but I should be there. I'm here, but I should be there. And it's just like, but you'll get there if you enjoy the process and the experiences that will come along with being where you're at. That's exactly the whole point of the journey. It's like you're doing one step at a time. You know, it's like, why am I not in the forest yet? It's like you're walking towards it. Yeah, but I'm not there. Shut up. You're walking towards it. Like,
right. So I think that what's going on there oftentimes, and it's so normal, is that we go into the comparing mind, you know, and the comparing mind, I mean, keep in mind, like, I also I dabble like sort of in the spiritual sense, but then also like in the scientific sense, that the comparing mind is there because it was a primitive tool to help us grow. You know, back from like caveman days, the comparing mind is there because it meant growth and development. And right now, once again, we'll tie it back to meditation. Yeah. It's great to notice the comparing mind of, oh, I should be there. Notice when you're doing it though, because it might just be like, when you really dissect it, it might just be your brain realizing like, this is a goal for me. Like,
you know, I was gonna say, yeah, it's actually a goal. Like, it's not a comparison. Yeah. Yeah. It's just
right.
Like,
so the thing that hurts us is really taking the comparing mind and attaching the judgment to it.
And the meaning. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Right. So like, let's do without the judgment, and let's see if we can find the meaning behind what our comparing mind is trying to tell us.
Yeah. You must be working on a lot of like uncovering needs too, eh?
Yeah. So, you know, I would say definitely over 50% of my course is really going through the self-identification process. So even though it is a course, like I said, since it all does tie back to the self, it is literally you identifying these little tiny pieces of yourself because they affect the relationship part of it. Yeah. So I dive so deeply into the identification process to really make sure that a person has a really good sense of self so that they can say, I know with such clarity that this is me and this is what I bring to the table and this is what I can offer in the relationship. Now, can this match up with my partners?
Yes. Like right now, my brain is just like, there's so many things I want to talk about. Why is it like so close to 12 already? I could talk to you for like 15 hours. I swear to God. Now, okay, I want to do something fun.
You know, I think that we need to do a part 2 on this at some point.
I think so. That was our first time together. So like, I'd be so down to do a part 2 and like really like, because I love the bouncing between like how to manage the outside, but also like, come back here. Who are you? What do you want? What do you need? Like, and my course, like the first week of my course is all about pretty much just that. It's just like, and the way I look at it is from the place of, like I was saying earlier, like the fact that we are energy. And so how do you take care of your energy? Because energy kind of encompasses everything, like your past, your present, your future, your thoughts, your mood, your body sensations, your feelings, your environment. So it's like, got some work to do. So stop, being so hard on yourself. Because this is quite the machine that we have, you know what I mean? And that consciousness is a double-edged sword. So talking about double-edged sword, I want to part with a fun thing to share. And I was thinking, I like being super authentic. And the last thing I want to do is like pretending I'm something I'm not. And so the way to do that, and one of my coaches does it, and I think it's so cool, she shares something that she does not want people to know about herself. I know, and that's tough because you're like, yo, so I'm going to put a little spin on it. I want to talk, and I'll go first anyway, but like, I want to talk about maybe a moment that is something that's happening to me that I'm using my course for, because I'm literally in the middle of a storm that I know the course I'm building right now is actually helping me navigate. Does that make sense? So if you're a relationship coach, maybe you're like, okay, I had this meltdown with my hubby, blah, blah, but this is what we did and this is what happened. Like, yay! So for example, so what I don't want people to know about me. So I'm creating this online course, and I don't want people to know that I am so scared, because it's the first time I'm putting it out. And when I say scared, like, you don't even understand. It's a mix of like a little 4-year-old that's supposed to go on a ride that is too big for her, plus like having a tiger ready to eat me, plus like no food for 3 days. Like, I don't know, like this intense panic. And at the same time, I'm like, it's also excitement. But this is what I don't want people to know, is that I am so shit scared to stepping into this. And so what I'm doing is I'm actually using my course that says your energy right now. how do you want your energy to go about it? Do you want to blame yourself? Do you want to put it too high that it falls low? Do you want to? And so as I'm contemplating all of it, I'm actually able to navigate this incredible, incredible thing that's happening to me. And I'm decided and I'm committed to do it, but okay.
That
so
is
yeah,
real.
yeah, and I'm putting my practice into play, which is like no attachment to the result. Set your intentions, be connected to your intentions, and do the work. So there it is. That's what I didn't want you to
love it. I
So,
love the vulnerability too.
Well, yeah, you know, we're real people.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
So
my turn.
Juicy.
All right. Something that I don't want people to know about me.
Yeah.
Is so for a long time I suffered from and struggled with anxiety and depression. And really the healing thing for me, like it got to the point where literally I was having panic attacks day in, day out for months on end, like could barely function. And I got to the point where, like, luckily I knew that I needed help. I went to my doctor and I said, I don't believe in antidepressants. Like, I know that I need something, but I don't believe in antidepressants because I don't want to throw medicine at the issue.
Yeah.
And so she, like, I'm so grateful that I had an amazing physician, because she prescribed me something that that was an antidepressant, but she's like, we're just going to put you on the very lowest dose and we can see how it goes, but understand that this is a Band-Aid, and sometimes we just need a Band-Aid so that we don't bleed out. So in conjunction with this, you know, I really recommend you figuring out, like, what is causing this, what is going on. So that's when I started going through the therapy process, and literally session number 1 with my therapist, she was like, oh, I know your problem. You're codependent. And and I was like, no, I don't think you know me, because I'm a very independent person, and so, like, there's no way that that's my problem. That was absolutely my problem. And it took about 2 years of literally going down the codependence rabbit hole, and understanding that that is where all of my stuff stemmed from, was really that I was using relationships, you know, my romantic relationships, to validate myself. And so when I wasn't receiving that validation through my relationship and from my partner, I was a train wreck. And I didn't know it. So I went through my 2 years of my own self-healing journey, but that's what led me to be a relationship coach.
Wow, what? That just shows that you know what you're talking about, women. Wow. Wow. I'm glad you made it. I'm glad we're going to get to have all your wisdom. So I want to see that course too. Perfect timing. So I already posted, you know, what you do, your website. Is there other places or other things you're up to right now that you want to share with people?
Yes. So people can absolutely find more of me on Facebook and on Instagram at Callie Mao Coaching. And if they're interested in looking more into my services, my coaching courses, all of the fun things that are going on in my world with regard to relationships and building that healthy foundation, they can check out my website, and that's www.callieMaoCoaching.com.
Thank you so much, Callie. Oh my gosh, I feel like we barely scratched the surface. And we'll come back for more. I hope. It was so awesome to have you today. I hope this is going to be helpful for some sisters and brothers. We're still, you know, putting maybe others first and look at you first in a little bit more, because this is where shit starts getting real and beautiful and awesome. And yeah, thanks again for coming. We'll see you
Thanks
next
for
time. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, Callie. And thanks
Bye.
everybody for coming. Murray and Jody and Aaron. Thank you guys.